Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to offer dana, then please do go to justthiszen.org/giving. Your support really does make a huge difference. Thank you so much.
Feels very tender to be back with everyone this evening. And it's good to be back in this space together. For various reasons, I've been thinking a lot about impermanence and the way that life just continuously moves and shifts in small ways and big ways. And some of you will know that one of the chants we have is called the Verse of the Hahn. And it's written on the wooden block, a wooden block that hangs outside the zendo, and it's struck with a mallet to call the practitioners into morning sitting. And it says, "Great is the matter of birth and death. All is impermanent, quickly passing. Awake, awake, don't waste this precious life. Great is the matter of birth and death. All is impermanent, quickly passing. Awake, awake, don't waste this precious life." And very sadly, it has moved very quickly for one of our dear members of our Sangha, who some of you may have met at the last retreat, Emma Palmakis. And if you were at the retreat with her in May, you would have remembered her as a really vibrant, life-filled woman. And she'd been involved in nothing special many years ago. We met her in Sheffield, and then she's had a time away, and then she rejoined us and came to the retreat in May. And sadly and shockingly, since then her health became extremely challenging, and within a very short period of time, she died on Wednesday. Just some of you will know Emma and some of you won't. Some of you will have met her, and so I'm just going to take a moment just to say she dropped her body on Wednesday morning. There's a beautiful poem by Basho, which we read at Ginny's funeral. The temple bell stops, but the sound keeps coming out of the flowers. And that's my feeling. The bell has stopped, but the sound keeps moving. I was really fortunate that I was able to speak with her just 10 days before she died. We had a long Zoom call, which was very tender and lovely and sad. It was many things, and at that point she already knew that death was a very possible outcome of her illness. And she was full of grace and curiosity about how to manage the coming time as open-heartedly as possible. That was her real intention, as well as, of course, as we were talking, having moments of deep fear and just confusion, and most naturally a deep sadness for those she knew she would leave behind. And at the point of meeting her, she was waiting to know if treatment was going to be possible, and was living with a lot of uncertainty, a lot of decisions and a lot of uncertainty. And that was one of the things that she was finding really hard to deal with. And I found myself saying to her, I think you're living most closely with the reality of life. I think you are living most closely with the reality of life. The rest of us are just abiding in the delusion of certainty. And it felt between us like, you know, our often quoted phrase of not knowing is most intimate, felt starkly and accurately by far the greatest truth of that moment. And we talked of many things, but she also asked what she might do. how could she sort of be with herself and the world? And I talked to her. When I saw her, she'd managed to have her hair washed, first time in quite a number of days, and it was sort of, I don't know, those of you who know her, she had a gorgeous mane of hair. And I told her I was really appreciating, how glorious her hair looked spread out on this really pretty botanical bed linen that she had. And we talked about, as far as possible, in the many different circumstances she was going to find herself in, when could she let the soft animal of her body love what it loves? Were there moments? We talked about, how certain nurses had the most beautiful touch, like a soft hand. I'd been waiting to speak to her because she'd been offered some reflexology, and that kind of really intentional touch had been wonderful. And she talked about having a tree outside the room that she could see, and she could see the leaves moving in the breeze. And someone bought her a cup of tea, to find ways to be with what was nourishing in the midst of it all. And Judy and John in Sheffield maintained close contact with her until her body naturally turned to the business and work of dying. And I know that being held in love and care by the Sangha really mattered to her. And it mattered to us to be able to offer that kind of support as the shocking depth of her illness overtook her. And when I spoke to her, she'd originally been really hoping to come to Lynn's 80th birthday party, and she really wanted people to know that she was carrying Lynn in her mind and heart. She was still feeling connected and wanting to offer her own care, even as she was being cared for. There was something so alive for me is when we say the refuges. We take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And it felt just like with the verse of the Han. I had the real embodied feeling of how these things we say aren't just words on a page or a screen, but can we actually take them into our body, into our bones? And I wrote to Flint to tell him. I'd been keeping him informed about what was happening, and I had a half memory of a story, and I asked him if he remembered. I gave him the outline of the story and he remembered, and this was his response. The story I'd remembered was that Katagiri Roshi took a group of his American students to Japan to spend some time. While he was there, his teacher died, and I remembered that he'd been found weeping in grief. Katagiri Roshi had been found weeping in grief. And the students were stunned and confused and asking him how they were to understand his teachings about death being an illusion when he's clearly deeply, deeply upset. And he said something like, yes, and the most painful illusion. Flint said, there is no separation. There is just not trouble. There is no trouble grieving, wailing in anguish. Can we do it freely and fully and honestly? It is what it is, and it would be improper not to feel these things. Practice does not make us immune. It makes us more sensitive and at the same time more resilient as a larger container. And I would want to remind everybody here that we live in a body that has a nervous system, and grief and anguish and loss and sorrow are bodily experiences. Broken hearts are real things. To think we must traverse losses and setbacks with no response is to disavow our very humanness and the depths of the loves and connections that we have. Over the last few years, Josh and I have had the privilege of leading some Sangha members' funeral, and part of what we say is a dedication. And you turn and you face the coffin and you directly address the person inside. The dedication is, as surely as we are born into this world, we leave it. It is the way with everything. returning to the source of truth, Emma. You have finished this life. The great mystery we all face is no mystery to you now. You are already well on your way. You have gone before us, but we have no idea how far ahead. So you remind us that we are uncertain about our own lives. In the hope of benefiting your great spirit as you make the transition by offering these flowers, these words, these precious memories, this music, our tears and laughter, our voices in remembrance, we have gathered here today to celebrate your life and to support each other in our grief. That's what we need to do, isn't it? To have a response that is a response to all of it. Not just sorrow, but also the funny things, not just feeling like it's a tragedy, but also the glory of a life lived. So Emma's death is a terrible sadness and will be a deep shock, and it's a huge thing, as it should be, for those who are left to mourn. And she has gone before us, and none of us know how far ahead she is. So I've been thinking a lot about how in our sadness or grief and shock we can perhaps find ways for this to help liberate us from our desire for permanence, for happy endings, for fairness, and find ways to be really up close, right up close, with life exactly as it is, in all the ways that it is. Flint has used a metaphor about us all. We're all in our boats rowing into the middle of a great lake. And once we're in the middle, we sink. We don't row to a firmer shore. We row into emptiness. And none of us know where our middle is. So how can this impermanence support us to live lives full of connection, knowing it'll change? Full of vitality, knowing it'll go, full of mistakes we can't undo, and successes that fall away. One of the practices that I've found really helpful is something called the Five Remembrances, and some of you may have known this. So I just wanted to read a poem that I wrote about the Five Remembrances, and there'll be places you can go and have a look and see if it's also a help to you. The first remembrance is, I'm of the nature to age. I think of aging as a gift. We who do not grow old are fortunate to feel our bodies slide as time winds its way across the landscape of our being, to soften, sag, tire, blur, and fail to hear the world speaking to us quite so clearly. It means we're still here, swimming into the long tide. I cherish the marks of my existence. I'm of the nature to get sick. Thank goodness I'm of the nature to get sick, for it means I have a body that breathes and a heart that beats and muscles that support my steps, maybe falteringly, through life. This precious blood thrums through my veins, is a tributary of the mighty river of life. It joins me to the flow of the beating universe, and as I swim in it, I am fallible and will fail. Sickness, though, tells me I am yet here and grateful. I'm of the nature to die. Death joins me to the whole of life. If I cannot die, I am not separate from the mighty inexorable tides of life. Trees, birds, oceans, stars, and human animals have their seasons. We're all part of this ebb and flux. To not die would be an impenetrable separateness, alone with endless life. To know I'm going to die is to join in with the ever-changing chorus of life. Hallelujah. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There is no escape being separated from them. Oh, the blessedness of change, of a life we live in turmoil, how suffering can arrive out of the clear blue sky, how we cannot hold on to anything. Can we learn to love and let go, love and let go? What we can't be certain of, which is of course all things, acquires tenderness and beauty in its fragility. The cup that we drink from is already broken. Knowing that, isn't it more dear? We are all blossoms on the great tree of life. We will all flower and fall. My only true possessions are my actions, and I cannot escape their consequences. I build my life piece by piece, most often unable to see where the ends of the threads I'm weaving into the fabric of my life come from or go to. I don't get to choose all the colours or the patterns in what I make. I swim in the 10,000 reasons, trying as best I can not to make things worse. And of course I do. The smallness of my vision and world cannot encompass the vast, pitiless magnificence of life. Still, I can try, and I do. How might we take these remembrances, like the chants, into our very being, so that they support us to turn towards life and cherish it, not turn away from it? And because in Buddhism we appear to love a list, I'd like to offer Frank Ostaseski's 5 Invitations as another possible scaffold for managing change and loss. Frank was one of the co-founders of the Zen Hospice and has sat with, he says, thousands of dying people, I can believe that, from all walks of life. And he has distilled from this being with death in all its many forms, with his guiding principle of meet them where they are, which is our guiding principle when we sit, meet myself where I am. And he attended exactly where they were at, which was graceful, wretched, peaceful, agitated, rageful, lonely, cherished, wanted, unwanted, violent. A reprieve after suffering, or a life cut short, a full stop on a long, rich life, or a brutal ending. And some awake and some not. And he says, and I learn that the activities of caregiving are themselves quite ordinary. You make soup, you give a back rub, change soiled sheet, help with medications, listen to a lifetime of stories lived and now ending, show up as a calm and loving presence, nothing special, just simple human kindness. Yet I soon discovered that these everyday activities, when taken as a practice of awareness, can help us awaken from our fixed views and habits of avoidance, whether we are the ones making the beds or the ones confined to them. We have to confront the uncertain nature of this life. We become aware of the fundamental truth that everything comes and goes. Every thought, every lovemaking, every life. We see that dying is in the life of everything. Dying is in the life of everything. Resisting this truth leads to pain. And of course, many of us are deeply familiar with that resistance, aren't we? And he also says this, which I found really helpful, that this person now, this me, thinking about my own death, is not the person who'll die. He says, so often in life we move beyond what we imagined we were capable of, and breaking through that boundary propels us towards transformation. Someone once said, death comes not to you, but to someone else whom the gods make ready. Death comes not to you, but to someone else whom the gods make ready. And this sentiment feels true to me. The person I am today, living in this story, is not exactly the same person as the one who will die. Life and death will change me. I will be different in some very fundamental ways. For something new to emerge within us, we must be open to change. When we embrace impermanence, a certain grace enters our lives. We can treasure experiences, we can feel deeply, all without clinging. We are free to save a life, to touch the texture of each passing moment completely, whether the moment is one of sadness or joy. When we understand on a deep level that impermanence is the life of all things, we learn to tolerate change better. We become more appreciative and resilient. Something was moving in Emma in the meeting that I had with her and how I heard her communicating with Judy and John, as it did in Carrie and Ginny and Suzanne and Kath, people who knew they were walking into death. Flint quoted the Five Invitations on a recent post in a website that he has for Erin's, as he and Erin navigate, who they're both becoming in the ripples that Erin's illness is creating. And the Five Invitations are: don't wait. Don't wait. It's not the same as impatience, but don't put off the things that fill your spirit and help you live in a way that is a pathway to fulfillment and an antidote to regret. Don't wait. Welcome everything, push away nothing. Welcome everything, push away nothing. To welcome everything is an act of love. On Tuesday, an inquiry, I quoted Joshu being asked how to meet catastrophe, and he said, welcome. Welcome. Imagine that for yourself. I imagine that for myself, to look at my life in all its messiness and say, welcome. Bring your whole self to the experience. Wholeness doesn't mean perfection. It means no part left out. Again, an inquiry offered that being with means being with it all. Everything is included. And any response we're having to the news of Emma's death or to our own catastrophes and triumphs is there. It's not there to be paralyzed by or exiled by shoulds or musts. And that story of Katagiri Roshi losing his teacher, he brought all of himself to that. His loss, his deep loss. Find a place of rest in the middle of things. Rest that is not dependent on managing conditions, not that I'll rest when I've done everything. But even in the turmoil of life continues to offer us, there can be vast, spacious places of emptiness. Can you let the soft animal of your body love what it loves? Can we find those moments when we aren't just being pulled about, but we really notice the tree, or we really feel the warm hand on ours, or we enjoy the cold water we've been offered? And his last 5 invitations is cultivate, don't know mind. An invitation to empty our minds and open our hearts, to deeply know that we actually don't know, can induce anxiety, but it also can help us create and cultivate curiosity. When I was talking with Emma, she didn't know. She didn't know whether she was going to get treatment. She didn't know how long she'd got if she didn't. She didn't know how she was going to manage. She didn't know what she was going to tell people. She found a way in moments that not knowing really was the most intimate with the truth of life. And this poem, which I've also lived with for a long time, and I'm sure many of you have too, points again to it being, it's about us. I'm talking tonight about Emma, but one night this will be people talking about me or talking about you. What happened to Emma, her meeting in the middle of the lake, will be happening to all of us. We all have a middle of our lake where we sink into emptiness. The poem is called The Last Time by Marie Howe. The last time, she wrote it about being with her brother who was dying. The last time we had dinner together in a restaurant with white tablecloths, he leaned forward, took my 2 hands in his, said, I'm going to die soon. I want you to know that. And I said, I think I do know. And he said, what surprises me is that you don't. And I said, I do. And he said, what? And I said, I know that you're going to die. And he said, no, I mean you are. Our practice together is a container for the fires and desolations of life. The Dharma is a road map for travelling into uncertain territory, and Sangha holds us in love and awareness of ours and each other's Buddha nature. Let's give thanks for Emma and her practice and her teaching, and send love to all those affected. May they too know love and be loved and supported in the paths they now tread. Let us cherish with each other the preciousness and the impermanence of our own beautiful lives. Thank you all.